Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we're going to try and repair the damage to a whole load of different Skeletor's faces, because as people who watch this channel will know that I have quite a big Skeletor army, because let's face it, he's the best evil sort of villain there is out there. And in front of me here you can see a selection of the sort of normal basic sort of Skeletors that I have, and some of them are in a pretty tatty state. The faces have had quite a lot of sort of damage done to them. I've got a couple here actually sort of in pieces, and we'll be fixing those up as well. Let me show you a couple of the faces so you can see what I mean. This poor chap here, which is just a head, this was sent in to me by Kristen Abbott, and as you can see there's not a lot of paint left on him, and he looks in yeah, pretty tired. And then I have a couple of others here that have been in my army for a little while. This guy is missing most of the sort of front of his nose. It's really just the paint that's worn off, but it does make him look pretty scruffy. And then we've got some like this where they've just lost bits of paint, so you can see he's lost a bit just on his sort of upper lip, and this poor chap here has got a bit of a gouge on the side of his chin. It all makes them look a little bit scruffy, and I think we can do something to improve all of those. I've never actually sort of had a go at repainting Skeletor, so this is going to be quite a new sort of project for me. And there are many different sort of variants of his face, so I'm going to be doing it the most sort of basic version of his face, which is this one where you've got a green outer sort of colour, you've got a bit of a yellow on the inside, and then some red on his eyes. There are versions where there is a bit of blue on his eyes. I think I've got one here possibly, but they sort of vary. Actually I can see him right at the back, so I'll just grab him. There you go, there is one with a little bit of blue around his eyes, but I'm going to go for the most basic version, which is green, yellow, and then the red in the middle. I think these two heads are probably going to be the best test cases, because as you can see they are by far the worst. There's a lot of damage gone on to those. First thing I need to do actually with all of these is to give them a good clean. This one that's just been sent in by Kristen is actually quite dirty, so I'm going to give that a good clean. I also, while I'm doing this, might as well repair this guy, because as you can see this is a poor Skeletor who has no arms and legs, and included with this head Kristen very kindly included some legs and some arms, so I'm going to give him a sort of once over as well. And you can see actually at some point somebody has painted the pelvis of this Skeletor, so I'm going to remove the paint on that. I have plenty of videos already showing how to do this, so I'll put links to that in the description. But basically we use brake fluid, and I'm going to go and soak this guy in some brake fluid. That should remove that paint, and then we can get him all tidied up. And while that is happening, I am going to give the faces of these a very good clean. Just going to be using some hot soapy water and a toothbrush to make sure I can get all of the sort of grime out of all the little details, and then once that's done we can yeah, have a go at painting them. I'm also going to be doing some other work on these Skeletors, because a lot of them have very floppy legs, like this poor chap here. The bands that hold the legs on tend to perish over time, and you can get these things called he bands, which are replacement bands. Again, I've shown these in multiple videos while fixing Masters of the Universe toys, so I will put a link in the description to those videos, and also to where you can get these from. after all that, we are now ready to get on with painting. This is the Skeletor that had the painted pelvis, and as you can see, that has cleaned up really nicely. That's always a very satisfying thing to do, is to remove old paint from a toy, make it look as good as it possibly can, and that's going to be quite a nice figure by the time we fix everything else up. But first, I think we should start with a simple paint application. We're going to start with this Skeletor, which has the least amount of damage. You can see there is just a little bit of damage to the yellow on his top lip there. I think that will be a good practice one to go for. Then we can start trying to do some of the more complicated ones. Now you will notice that every single one has a slightly different shade of green and a slightly different shade of yellow, so I'm just going to mix these as I go. Now I do have a yellow, which is this one, which is a Vallejo model colour, which is 70.953 flat yellow, but I don't think that's going to be quite right, because this yellow has a little bit of green in it, so I'm going to be mixing that with some of this number 70.967, which is an olive green, and we'll see if we can sort of mix those two to match. If that doesn't work, I also have some Humbrol paints here, and this is number 99 or number 66. I never know which, because they don't actually put a dot on it, which makes it quite awkward to work out what the number is, but that is quite a vibrant yellow, maybe almost sort of too neon. So I think my first port of call is going to be these Vallejo ones, so flat yellow and olive green. Let's do a little bit of mixing and we'll see if we can get something to match. If it's too dark or too bright, then I also have some 33 black and 34 white. All of these are matte paint, so at the end we will need to put on a top coat, which is number 135, which is a sort of gloss clear coat. But initially I just want to get the colours sorted, so let's do some mixing and we'll see what works. Okay, so I've squidged out two little amounts of those colours, and we can see if we get the yellow, I'm just going to paint a little bit of that on there. And you can see that it's not bad, but it's just that little bit too yellow. So before that dries, we'll just wipe that off. Now if I add a tiny amount of green into that yellow, already I think that's too much green. It really did need to be a tiny amount. Let's just mix that over here. That's not looking bad. So you can see there that that is a much closer match. It's just fine tuning all of these paints. Nothing will sort of work straight out of the bottle. You'll always need to mix them. And on a Skeletor, it's going to be a lot of mixing. So let's go for that. That's a bit of yellow with a very, very tiny amount of the green in it. I think that should do quite a nice job. There you can see that's not too bad at all. It's really gone on quite nicely. Skeletor does have tiny little sort of indents that shouldn't be painted, but I've actually sort of, the paint has run into those. I may just sort of touch that up afterwards. I've got a little bit of this purple colour, which is a violet, that mixed with a little bit of black. Should enable me to sort of touch those up just at the end, or even I might just get a knife and just scrape them out, because actually it doesn't look like that plastic has been painted at all, so a knife just to scratch those pieces out. But the actual colour match I'm very happy with. I also have this Skeletor here, which has a very tiny amount of damage just to the green on his chin, but that green has got a tinge of blue to it. So what I've done is I've mixed the yellow and the green together to get that sort of close match, and then I've added a very tiny amount of this 7841 Andrea blue just to make it match this one. But this is the only character I've got with this sort of strange tinge to it. Every Skeletor is slightly different, so this really is quite a sort of process to do. But you can see that paint match is not bad. It's still possibly not quite the same sort of vibrant green, but it's getting ever so close. Maybe just a tad more yellow in it. A lot of this is very fine tuning though. You just have to sort of play until you get something that is close enough. Could be that I even just sort of repaint all of that chin and then you wouldn't even notice that. But yeah, very subtle changes that you have to do with these paints to make them match. Don't think that is too bad. Certainly do for my display here. Now, as I mentioned, this Skeletor should have 3 lines at the top of his mouth to match the 3 lines at the bottom. So I've just got some sharp tweezers here and I'm going to try and scrape off the paint. See how that does. Oh, that's not bad actually. yeah, I think that works quite nicely. You can see there's now lines there. I'll just finish these off, but rather than painting them, yeah, scraping the paint off seems to work. Once this is fully dry, we'll put the clear top coat on, but for the moment that's not looking too bad at all. Now we can move on to this chap who has a lot more damage all over his face. I'm going to start with the yellow, the main part of his face. We are going to be mixing the yellow and the green together, but I'm also adding a little bit of white to it because this one has a slightly sort of whiter look to it, and I think that should sort of make something that matches quite nicely. So I've already mixed it just here, and we'll give that a go. Yeah, that's not bad at all. It's just about perfect. Yeah, I think that will be quite nice. So again, I'm just going to sort of paint all of this area. We'll get him looking nice. I've got a fairly big brush here at the moment. I'm going to swap to a smaller brush to do some of the finer details. But really you can use whatever you're comfortable with. And this may need a couple of coats just because it's large areas we're dealing with. For the green on this one, again, I've mixed some of the Valencia green and yellow and added a tiny amount of blue and a little bit of white just to sort of mute it down. I think I've got a colour now that is good enough, so we can start touching up all of the little patches on his face here. Yeah, that's not looking bad at all. It's amazing what a difference it makes once you just start sort of touching in these sort of damaged pieces. It really makes the figure actually look quite respectable again. So yeah, let's get just this painted up. I can see I've got a few little more yellow areas to go over, but it's always doing a sort of few passes on this, I think. But yeah, let's get this painted up. Now the final thing to do on this Skeletor is paint his eyes. It actually looks like someone has inserted some pins into his eyes because I can push this set of tweezers right in, so the little dark patches right in the middle is just because someone has poked holes in his eyes. But I think we can make those look a little bit better. What I've got here is some 238. This is a Humbrol flat acrylic, and I've mixed it with a tiny amount of black because it's just too bright for me. So I've got a little bit mixed here. And I reckon a little blob of that right in the centre of his eye will hide that hole quite nicely actually. You can see that does make quite a big difference just painting in that hole, so I'll do the other side as well. And there you go, I think that looks a whole lot better. He just needs the clear coat put on top of all of this once it has dried, and then I think that's quite a remarkable difference from the very battered Skeletor head we had to start with. And now that I've got all of these sort of colours sorted out in my mind, we can go ahead and tackle this one, which is by far the worst of the lot. And I'm just going to use all of the colour mixing that I've just shown you, and we'll see if we can get this looking half decent, because at the moment it's a sorry state. That actually ended up being a lot easier than I'd expected. As you can see now, the Skeletor face is looking really very nice. So just repainting those pieces just makes such a big difference. I've not actually painted in the eyes yet. There's a little bit of a sort of scratch on this left hand eye, but I may just leave that because the overall effect is pretty nice. You can see I've also used the tweezers there just to scrape out the paint around his mouth, just to give that some definition, and that really does work. So quite a sort of challenge, but actually the end results are looking very nice. The final thing I need to do is actually just fix some of the paint on the boots of these Skeletors. As you can see, quite a lot of them have got sort of paint rubs. For that I'm going to be using another Vallejo colour. This is Violet. This is 70.960. That mixed with an incredibly tiny amount of matte black gives you a purple that's a very close match. You can see I'm just going to touch up the little scuffs on this, and yeah, that's a pretty close match. So that is what I'm going to do now, just paint those over, and then once it's all dry I'm going to put the top coat of 135 on all of the pieces that I've painted, just to make it match the sort of the shine of the original paint, and then that's it. That will be Skeletor done. And so here we have all of the Skeletors with their paint repaired. I'm going to show you each one individually, so now you can sort of try and spot the repairs now. So this was the Skeletor with a slight chip on his chin, and you can see by the time the top coat is on that is very hard to spot indeed. So I'm very happy with that one. Then we move on to this chap here who had a big gouge out of the front of his nose, and so we've repainted the yellow on that, and again with the top coat on. That is a very nice match. It's hard to tell that that's been repainted at all. Then we come on to this one, which had quite a lot of damage all over actually. This one's a little bit scruffy around the edges, but actually there was quite a lot of sort of damage to the rubber. But even still, with all of that in place, I think I'm still very happy with that one. Certainly a perfectly displayable face. And then the final one, which was the most damaged, is just this head on a stick. And as you can see, that one's come out really very nice as well. I actually put a couple of coats of the top coat on this one just to try and even it out a bit. So it's got a little bit more gloss than the others, but I have some figures here that have quite a gloss finish. So it's not sort of out of step with some of the other paint jobs that are on the original figures. But even still, considering how bad that original face was, that is a marked improvement. Certainly something I'd be very happy to display here on any of the Skeletors I have. So now I need to find a body for him, because at the moment he's just a head on a stick. As you can see, it's a fairly complicated bit of painting to do, just because every Skeletor has a slightly different sort of finish to it, and in fact every Skeletor has a slightly different shape to how they're painted. I can show you here. I have a hardhead Skeletor. You can see he's got incredibly pointy sort of yellow bits above his eyes, whereas none of the others have them that pointy, but some have them sort of more angled, more curved. So really there is a lot of variation as to what you can do for sort of shape wise on the sort of decoration of the face, and we just make it so that you're happy with it. I'll also show you the boots. I forgot to show you that. So here are the boots with the touched up paint and the top coat on, and again that's actually very hard to even spot that those have been painted, so that's a nice sort of colour match on those. This video really basically has just been a guide on how to fix the paint. I'm not going to fix up the rest of Skeletor, because basically it's finding bits of armour, and I've covered repairing some of the armour in previous videos, and for the other figures in my collection I'm just sort of still hunting down parts. I seem to be missing a lot of skirts for figures, and obviously the main chest armour, but really when you're army building that's just what happens. So I hope this video has been of interest to you. If it has, then hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.